So that the witnesses will be aware of, we still have the problem of the EPW hearings coinciding with the Commerce. So we go back and forth. In the last year's FAA bill included a provision that I authored that created the regulatory fast lane to allow industry, including companies like Xcel Energy, to operate drones beyond the line of sight, to inspect transmission lines, pipelines, and the such. Earlier this year, your company, I'm speaking now to Mr. Fowke, and the FAA entered into an agreement, the Partnership for Safety Plan, so that your company can use drones to inspect transmission lines. Could you briefly share with us the process Xcel went through to enter into this agreement with the FAA and how the partnership will benefit Xcel? And then I want to have a question for the FAA.
Well, I want to specifically thank you, Senator, for your amendment or your section that you added that addresses that beyond visual line of sight, because that is how we're going to optimize this technology in the utility business. And recognizing the utility business is unique in that it is a critical infrastructure, I think, is also very important. So while we were in discussions with the FAA around the partnership you mentioned, the legislation certainly pushed it to conclusion. So thank you for that. And we hope to actually use the technology to inspect some of the lines that run through your state.
I would expect that. Well, do you have any suggestions as to what the next step would be to streamline this system that is in effect right now?
Well, the partnership is a good first step. We have to test the technology, we have to make sure it's safe, and then we have to be willing to move forward with it. And I think our plan is to be able to be in position to start inspecting those lines within the year.
Yeah. Mr. Lawrence, I've had a few rough times with the FAA, but not with you. And so I understand that the new department is working very well. I appreciate your leadership and the FAA's Unmanned Aircraft Systems Department. According to the testimony submitted to the committee, the FAA has only granted 3 waivers to allow the operation of drones beyond the line of sight. Now, that's 3 out of how many? How many applications were?
As far as specifically how many applications we've had for beyond line of sight, I would have to come back with that specific number to you.
Is it accurate, though, that only 3 waivers have been granted?
I believe that is accurate, correct, Senator?
Yeah, okay. Is there something that takes longer than it should take on this? What is your prospects for the future? Because it looks like there's going to be a great demand.
Absolutely. So I think things are moving well in that direction. One of the challenges we have with beyond line of sight authorizations is the understanding of what to bring to the FAA. And so that has been the biggest issue, is people don't know what should they present to us in order to do beyond line of sight operations. So things like our Partnership for Safety Plan with Xcel is very helpful for that, because we're sitting down and having those discussions, and so we have that complete understanding of what equipment, what kinds of technologies to protect the aircraft that are also in that airspace, and that's really the key thing, is education right now.
Yeah, well, I recognize this is a new thing, and Mr. Fowke, when you were going through this process, you actually did sit down with them and talk your way through, and what obstacles did you see there that might help them in streamlining? I think this is something we want to do, but and you've already been there, so any suggestions?
Well, I mean, to the extent we can move forward the 107 waivers and have more than just 3, that's obviously going to be helpful, but we certainly respect that this technology needs to demonstrate it can work, and that's what the partnership is going to be about. And we think the timeline is one that should work for both parties, and we're actually very excited about being able to use that technology and start inspecting our lines, many of which, of the 20,000 miles, many of those lines are in very rural areas, so we think we can do it very safely.
Okay, that's good. And lastly, in last year's short-term FAA extension directed the FAA to establish a UTM pilot program by April of 2017. Are you going to make that?
Yes, sir. We are going to make that.
Okay, thank you. Let's see.